what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, today, big bad Simon Jolin Barrette packing both his pistols and saying this.
What I say to the federal government, that's not of your business. We decide at the National Assembly, the Quebecers are clear, and this is not a matter of federal government. So it's not of their business, and they should, on that subject of laïcité and on the subject of immigration, listen the Quebecers. That's a matter of respect.
Jim, that's not of their business. Them's fighting words. What did you think?
Well, first of all, and we giggle about this, and we're not being unfair. In a Quebec that pretends it's a world-class venue, okay? The Minister of Justice and former Minister of the French languages, English, is absolutely incoherent, okay? He sounds like a character in a comedy sketch, but that's to one side, okay?
Okay.
The fact is, okay, this is great news. It's and I heard you talking to Joe Ortona before about the MSB taking this to the Supreme Court. Yes, all of this could have been avoided if our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, had referred the entire issue of Bill 21 to the Supreme Court years ago. But, for whatever reason, he did not. And here we are hoping that it'll be heard within the next year and a half, 2 years. But here's the beauty of it. The Supreme Court is not going to pack up and have its hearing in Quebec and be covered by Quebec media only. The Supreme Court will be having its hearing on Bill 21, presuming it does hear it, and I suspect it will, in Ottawa. And it'll get national coverage. And then you will have to have one lawyer for the Legault government, perhaps even cabinet ministers for the Legault government, explain in French, because, Canada does have two official languages, why they fully expect to be able to suck and blow at the same time on everything. Why they expect to be able to benefit from all the financial, pluses of being a part of the Canadian Federation, and then use the Charter of Rights, not just of Canada, but of Quebec, because let's face it, there has to be a separate one for Quebec, and use both of those as a doormat. Remember, this is a government that even in the last election, it sent at that point, it sent 90 MNAs to the National Assembly. It did not even get 27% of the eligible vote in the last election. So when François Legault or Simon Jolin Barrette or Jean-François Robert says, Quebec wants this or Quebec wants, you're talking for yourself, buddy. Okay? You are, and I'm absolutely assure you, I don't mean this is just cockeyed optimism, Aaron. When the coverage of this trial, when the absurdity, the pettiness, the absolute nastiness of Bill 21 is slowly and dispassionately displayed on a regular basis to the rest of the country, I'm not entirely sure how many people in Quebec, because everyone's going to say, well, the next step is, if that gets shot down, it'll be a referendum on sovereignty. I'm not even sure it'll get to a referendum on sovereignty, Aaron, because I think, frankly, Quebecers have had it up to here with François Legault, his cabinet ministers, his cocktail napkin legislation, and the fact that this guy basically, without an enemy to point the finger at, doesn't have a clue. And we've been seeing that for the past 3 months.
I have a couple of questions based on that, Jim. To your point about the Supreme Court of Canada and this becoming a national issue, and I hadn't thought of that, there is still the possibility, is there not, that the Supreme Court could choose not to hear this case?
Absolutely. But I'm a betting man, Aaron. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a betting man. And I would bet you folding money they will hear this case. If only because I think there's a suggestion here, and Mr. Ortona, he wasn't making this up. This is actually part of the language. They will hear a case of national importance. And the fact that, rightly or wrongly, the federal government waited this long to say, well, if it goes to the Supreme Court, we will certainly intervene. I think the Supremes would be hard-pressed to turn around and say, we're not going to touch this, because this is honest to God, the fundamental question here is, what kind of a country do we have? And this is not just about Quebec, because we're talking about the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause. Can any clown politician in any jurisdiction turn around and take your rights? That's the question here.
All right, then
I know it's in the Constitution, but this is the question. Can they do it? in anticipation of your challenging a law. There's something very wrong with this picture, and that's something the court's going to have to address.
Okay, then let me ask you the next part, because this is the question I'm asking. We'll ask again when we get done here. If you're a betting man, folding money, would you bet it on the fact that the feds, in fact, stand up and go, okay, we said a year ago, and I played that David Lametti clip, that we would, if and when this gets to the Supreme Court, we being the government, he was justice minister at the time, we will be there. Do you think the feds now get involved, or do they find a convenient way to back out?
No, I think they'll get involved. Trudeau's even said, I mean, it would be, my God, it would be basically Justin Trudeau wrapping his arms around a barrel of TNT and lighting the fuse with a cigar if he turned around and backed off now. No, seriously, I mean, this is something he has always adhered to. For him to turn around and try and justify Ottawa's, skulking away from this case, and as I say, you cannot. I'm not being brilliant here, Aaron. This is what this case is about. What kind of a country are we going to have? I'll say it again, and I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not doing this for dramatic effect. Can any jerkwit politician in any province turn around and say, those rights you had yesterday, you don't have them today? Because that's exactly what we're talking about. Is that the kind of country we want? I think that's a question the Supreme Court should answer sooner rather than later.
I will add you one thing. When I asked this question the first time, I think we got at least 3 or 4 calls from people saying, you know what, they think the feds will find a way to walk away from this because they want to curry favor, obviously, with Quebec. There's an election. It'll be political. Polls will show it's not a good idea, and they won't do it.
With all due respect to our texters, Quebec is lost to the Liberals, okay? I don't know I don't know who it's going to stand up for. I doubt the Tories will probably come through for the Bloc. But right now, and I know you've been talking about this all week in various other contexts as well, even the Liberals on the island of Montreal are asking themselves a lot of questions right now about where their future is, and it's not just about the motion regarding Israel. I think there's a lot of Liberals are asking themselves which way are we going. But the idea at this point, when the Liberals under Trudeau are in complete total damage control, panic mode, okay, to turn around and say, no, we're gonna roll over because Francois Legault won't come after us. Francois Legault he came after him back, was it 2019? And he basically said, don't vote for the Liberal, suggested vote for the Conservatives.
Yeah,
the
right.
Conservatives lost 1 seat. Francois Legault is not a kingmaker, okay? Francois Legault is an Anglophobic bully, okay, who has no political influence outside that of the CAC. Okay, so for the idea somehow, oh no, Francois Legault will put on his robes and lift his wand and bad things are going to happen. No, Francois Legault as a political force is absolutely irrelevant.
All right, let me move on and get it to before we run out of time, Jim. So the Prime Minister, I guess, of France is here visiting, stopping by last night, dinner last night, out there shaking hands today. What do we make of this?
Well, I have to say it's so embarrassing because, Quebec politicians and usually nationalists, inevitably fake kits, but usually nationalists, whenever a high-ranking French politician comes over, they get all kind of goofy. They get all kind of chicken and kind of like, bumpkinish, and they kind of go, aw shucks, and they really want to get approval from the mother country. And it's so funny because you've got someone like Pierre Fitzgibbon who's turning around saying, well, it's so strange because it's crazy. France is our second biggest trading partner in Europe after Germany. And you think with everything we have in common that would not be the case. Although I'm sure there are French, and I know for a fact there are plenty of Quebecers who are going to say, you know what, we really don't have that much in common, and we're happy to keep it that way. But all that said, to say that you're scratching your head over Germany, the hottest economy in Europe, why that's your number one trading partner is interesting. But on the other hand, there's also the fact, and I credit Caroline Plante of La Presse Canadienne with throwing this figure in her report today, which is we do $5.8 billion worth of trade with France, okay? Guess who we did $12 billion worth of trade with last year?
I give up.
Texas.
Oh,
yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
Oh.
Everything in its context, right? And quite frankly, Gabriel Attal, the Prime Minister of France, spent a whole bunch more time during his visit assuring Justin Trudeau that the free trade deal with France is going to go through. Don't worry, we're going to get this thing off the ground. Count on me. And no, I really don't think he has spent any time whatsoever thinking about whether or not France is going to try to convince the rest of the world to support an independent Quebec if the yes side ever won a referendum, which is something Paul Pierre Plamondon suggested earlier this week.
Yeah, did no one ask him that? Did he not say, "Oh yeah, I'm in there 100%"?
I'm guessing it wasn't on the top of the scrum list questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.